Comments. Dr. Kotlikoff, you are now recognized.
It's a great honor, Chairman Johnson and Mr. Becerra and other distinguished members of the committee to be with you. I guess I'm on the left side of this table because I'm facing the Republicans. Maybe I might be viewed as a Republican because I was probably invited by the Republican members.
You're on our right.
You're on our right. Okay. Well, let me just say I've been voting on the left for my entire adult career. I voted for every Democratic president, including our current president. So I just want the people on the Democratic members to realize that I'm speaking here today, and also the Republican members, not as a political person. I'm an academic, I'm an economist, and I'm here to tell you some things that you haven't heard so far, and you may not hear from anybody else about Social Security's solvency and about its complexity and inequities, although some of these Gene mentioned. I think the first thing I want you to realize is that we have issues of generational inequity or fairness, and we also have issues of intra-generational inequity and fairness. And I think these things keep getting kind of confused. The Democrats, I sense, are very concerned about fairness within a generation. Are the rich being treated, who are the same given age, being treated fairly relative to the poor? And that's an important issue. But I want you to set aside that and assume that everybody within a cohort is exactly the same. So, Mr. Becerra, everybody your age, suppose everybody your age was exactly the same and looked just like you, okay? And everybody who's a year younger was the same and looked just like that person. And we have old people and young people, and there's no differences within the cohort. So would we want to leave enormous bills for our children and future generations? Would we want to engage in policies that social insurance policies, other kinds of policies that may do enormous good and may be very important because insurance markets don't operate very well? There's good economic arguments, but then the question is getting the government involved to fix some of these problems is one thing. Another thing is leaving future generations to pay for those fixes, pay the bills of future generations. And we have really a generational crisis here of enormous proportions. And the way economists look at this is we look at the fiscal gap. We look at, over the entire future of the economy, how much are the projected expenditures compared to the projected taxes measured in present value? What's the gap? What's the fiscal gap? This is what economists measure. The fiscal gap in the U.S. is currently $210 trillion. The country, that's according to the CBO's alternative fiscal scenario data released last week. That's 58% of the present value of revenue. So this country is 58% underfinanced. Detroit is about 20% underfinanced. Social Security by itself is 33% underfinanced. If you look at table F61 in the trustees report released yesterday, you'll see that there's a $24.9 trillion unfunded liability over the infinite horizon. It's not over 75 years. Nothing in economics tells us to look at 75 years and ignore the future. I have children, I'm sure many of you do as well. I started a little bit late, so I have young children who will be alive in 75 years. We can't ignore the commitments to them, and there's nothing in economics that allows us to do that in economic theory. So we have to measure things correctly, and economic theory is very clear that we should be measuring the infinite horizon fiscal gap. The trustees report is burying that number. They've been calculating it since 2002. The trustees don't even mention it in their summary statement. We hear statements that we just heard a statement that says Social Security is fundamentally sound. A system that is in worse shape than Detroit's pension systems is not fundamentally sound. A system that's 58% underfinanced, according to the trustees report, is not fundamentally, sorry, that's the entire country. The Social Security system is 33% underfinanced. This stuff is not fundamentally sound. We have to start thinking about things from a generational perspective, and that does not mean that you should not also focus on intragenerational equity. I'm all for that, okay? I've been a lifelong Democrat in terms of voting. I'm with you. And we have to look at that too. We have to look at fairness within and across generations, but we can't keep confusing these things. We can't, in the name of intragenerational equity, ignore what we're doing to all the children, poor and rich and alike. So now let me just mention, the last 6 seconds, what I'm going to do is show you Social Security's formula for the benefits of a spouse, age 8, 10 functions, 10 mathematical functions. This is the first time anybody's ever actually expressed this in math. 10 functions, one's in 4 dimensions, one's a maximum function. There's also side conditions that are very complicated, many functions to determine those side conditions of the variables that go in here. One of those side conditions is a maximum of a min function. It could not be more complex. People are making all kinds of crazy mistakes, and Social Security people, the people in the offices are providing all kinds of bad advice because the thing is just crazily complex. We need a new system that is not going to go broke.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
So we have 17 trillion in debt. We have potentially 10 to 20 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We could have over 50 trillion total liabilities just in those 2 areas. And we have 80 billion each year, at least this year, that is going to exceed what comes in. I would somewhat believe we have a current problem that we need to fix, and it's something we can't kick down the road, as I continue to hear. This is an issue that we need to start looking into. And Mr. Kotlikoff, I know you've mentioned some of those issues too.
Yeah, well, you're an accountant, so we have kindred interests here. More than 1,000 economists, including 17 Nobel Prize winners, have endorsed something called the Inform Act. If you go to the informact.org, you will see that they've endorsed bill, which is a bipartisan bill called H.R. 2967. And that bill requires infinite horizon fiscal gap accounting by the CBO, the GAO, and the OMB on an ongoing basis. And what we're seeing here is the entire economics profession, with the exception of people like Paul Krugman on one extreme and Art Laffer on another extreme, they're saying, if you look at the names of these people, they're on the right and the left. You've got people like Glenn Hubbard and Jeff Sachs agreeing to do infinite horizon fiscal gap. So the economics profession is not confused about how to do the right accounting. The trustees of the Social Security Administration are hiding the right accounting in their appendix. They've actually moved it back this year to table F61 in the appendix. It used to be not in the appendix. Now it's buried in the appendix. And that says that what's really going on is that the unfunded liability of Social Security is actually 60% larger than the 75-year number you're focused on. So this system is actually in far worse shape, and it's part of a country's fiscal policy that's in far worse shape. And yes, Mr. Becerra, it's absolutely true that when you run $1 trillion war, okay, over 10 years, and you get nothing out of it for real in terms of any real success, that adds $1 trillion. If you don't pay for it, that adds $1 trillion burden to your kids and my kids and everybody else's kids. So we have to understand that we're engaged in take-as-you-go policies, not pay-as-you-go, but take-as-you-go policies on a wide-scale basis. We've been changing the tax structure to lower taxes on asset income. That shifts, and more on wage income. That shifts taxes away from older people towards younger people. We're doing a lot of things that are burdening everybody's children. So there is the issue of generational equity. There's the issue of intragenerational equity. We have to look at both of these. And if you go to the purpleplans.org, one other website to send you to, you will see a set of plans that have been endorsed by a lot of economists that I developed. Each one's a postcard length. It does involve a reform for Social Security, for taxes, for health care, comprehensive for the financial system. This is what economists would do to get rid of our overall fiscal gap, and you guys could agree on, because it's purple, because it's including blue and red considerations here. That's why it's called purple. And many economists, including Nobel Prize winners, have endorsed these plans. So I encourage you, A, to vote to pass the Inform Act, so we start doing proper fiscal accounting, comprehensive fiscal accounting, infinite horizon fiscal accounting, which is the only proper thing that economic theory says to do, and then also to adopt the purple plans, which will get rid of the fiscal gap.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
In the meanwhile, we got a program that's a great program, but it's not funded the right way. And we also, by the way, not everybody deriving a benefit has put any money in. So let's not get too out of whack on that. Yes, sir. Yeah, Mr. Kotlikoff.
Well, I think there's a resource everybody here could use, which is economists. And I know we don't have the greatest reputation in the world, but what? Yeah. But, if you do look at the purpleplans.org, you'll see a fix for Social Security, for the tax system. We can do things on the tax system that the Democrats would like, the Republicans would like, for example, that would actually, I think, improve the progressivity of the system, but in the process, shift the corporate tax from the corporations onto the households who receive, the shareholders, in a way that would bring more business back into the country, keep businesses from leaving, get more jobs here. We have a very difficult international competitive situation. We have a very difficult problem with smart machines taking people's jobs. But on the Social Security issue, Ms. Schwartz, the solution, there is a solution that's different from just maintaining the current system, which if I actually sat down with you for a day and went through the inequities and the mistreatment of low-income people, high-income people, middle-income people, this is like a random lottery what you get out of the system because it's so complicated. If you don't know what you're, and you can't call the Social Security system, whether they're well paid or not, whether they have more people or not, they're giving the wrong answers routinely. I know this because I have a little company that does Social Security software. I also write a column every week for PBS NewsHour about Social Security. I get people emailing me and writing me every day about the mistakes Social Security is making. These are the people that are getting to the people on the phone. It's too complicated. So one idea on the Purple Social Security plan is and this is not privatization as you know it, but it's individualization, but it's progressive. Think about freezing the old system in place, paying off everything that's accrued, and by putting in zeros in the earnings record, and then going to a new system for Social Security where everybody contributes 8% of their pay to a single account. Well, they have their own name on each account, but the contributions are divided 50-50 between spouses and legal partners. The government makes matching contributions on behalf of the poor. It's all invested in one way, not by Wall Street, but by a computer, a laptop, in a global market-weighted index fund with a floor, so the government would guarantee a zero real return, so if we have a crash, but everybody gets the same rate of return, and at the end of the accumulation phase, the government would annuitize the account balances on a cohort basis. This is a way.
The gentleman's time has expired.
That's okay.
And I do want to apologize. Yeah. I believe this was Mr. Kelly's time, so you may want to be answering his question. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. This was not my intention.
Trying to give you a solution.
Well, I'm curious to know whether his plan actually it taxes people above the $170,000 cap is now in your system.
One of these plans does eliminate the ceiling on the payroll tax. If you look at the purple tax plan, so it's a set of.
Well, you may want to speak to Mr. Kelly about this. He was really saying everyone is treated exactly the same, and people are not because there's a cap on the income.
I guess what I'm trying to say really quickly is that we have a lot of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I know we've just adjourned. I would like to hear you. I know some of you still wanted to respond. I would like to stay and hear. I heard what you said, ma'am. I do not agree with you. And I think there's a number of us that would not. So I'll stay and listen. I want to hear what you have to say. If this isn't a crisis, we better look up in the dictionary what a crisis is.
This is a huge crisis. This is a fantastic, the country's broke and Social Security is broke too. Chairman, and it's not broke in 30 years.
Are we still in hearing?
I will withdraw my adjournment. Yeah. Go ahead.
Social Security is not broke in 30 years or in 20 years or in 10 years. It's broke today. We need, according to the trustees report, table F61, just go look at it. It's buried, but you can find it. We need a 4.1% hike in the payroll tax rate. That's a 33% hike in the payroll tax rate for Social Security starting today, immediately and permanent. 33% tax hike. That's in the trustees report. This is what 1,000 economists at every top school, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Chicago, you name it, Princeton, 17 Nobel Prize winners, and they're not Republicans, they're not Democrats, they're both, okay? That's what they're saying to look at, guys. You guys keep talking about the 75-year numbers. Economics doesn't support that. It says you have to look at the infinite horizon. Now, this does not mean that the system is
Kotlikoff,
broke.
Mr. Chairman, I
It's
think
entirely
we
broke.
have to, if we want to have more discussion, I think that's fine. I think it's always important, as I think members have pointed out, we want to get to the solutions and rather than just talking about the issues. And so I think we can do that, but I think we have to do it in a way that's organized and constructive. If we're going to have every witness comment, we can do that, but that's going to take more time. Mr. Chairman, so long as we can just establish how you want to do this, you want to give them a chance to
Well, what I would prefer to do is let you all submit something for the record. If you care to, we will put it in. And with that, I think the committee stands adjourned. Thank you all for being here.